Thanks so much for joining us today. And so what's going on?
A lot of fun stuff.
I can tell you're having fun. So what's the fun part and what can we expect?
Well, I think everything's just about done. Education's taken care of, which was the big key to getting out of the legislature this year. Now we're down to the issue of tax relief and transportation, and that's kind of where we're at. We're doing the back and forth on both of those issues.
So the Senate Transportation Committee sent 312 to the amending order. Do you have any idea what they're going to do with it there?
You know, I assume the Senate's going through the process that the House has tried to go through the last couple of weeks. There's a lot of options, and I'm assuming they're looking at all of them. And if they're like the House, there's probably not a consensus on any of it. So I think they're probably going through the process that we do, that learning process of trying to decide what has the votes, trying to decide what they can and can't support, and how high they want to go. So that's probably where they're at. We had the advantage on the House of having the last couple of months to go through it. They haven't. And so now they'll go through the same process we did.
You know, with that in mind, what are you hearing? What are they willing to do and what's too far for them?
Well, I think the Senate is willing to go a lot farther than the House is. I think on the House side, once you get over that 110 million in new revenue, and the House has other caveats. They want something to do with tax relief and they want something to do with general fund. And on the Senate side, I don't think they care as much about the general fund. And I think that their number's probably higher, but I'm not sure.
Oh, with that in mind, your bill, House Bill
good bill.
311.
Yeah, I love that bill.
Your favorite bill.
I hear all kinds of stuff about my bill.
It kind of died. It kind of died pretty thoroughly on Tuesday in the Senate without even a real public debate. And you know, we heard that you heard the message that they were trying to send. What message was that? And was that the most diplomatic way for them to send the message in your point of view?
I think that they could have done it a little differently, but that's my opinion. I think the public has, you know, all the bad stuff came out that were, I shouldn't say bad stuff, the rumors, you know, it took the sales tax off of groceries. You know, there was a small impact on someone to get to the flat tax, but it made Idaho a lot better off, and the impact was very minimal, but you never would have known that because you never had a chance to hear it. The hearing, they didn't bring it up, it was a slam dunk. I think they did what they did probably because they didn't want to have a vote. I would have liked to have seen them have a vote, but maybe they were, you know, I don't know. I'm not a senator. I can't guess why they did what they did, but that's the process, you know. The House voted overwhelmingly for it, almost every Republican. It would have been great for the state of Idaho, but for now, it's off the table. But you never know. I'm assuming with the amendments coming over, maybe parts of it come back, maybe not. I don't know.
Now, had the Senate considered the bill as is, do you think it would have passed?
I'm not a senator, I don't know. But I really wanted to vote so I could see where they're at. You know, I think senators have a hard time saying, leave the sales tax on groceries. I think senators have a hard time saying, it's okay that we're, third or fourth highest taxed in regards to income tax west of the Mississippi. I mean, there's some parts of that bill that were great for Idaho. You know, when the House started this year, House leadership's always talked about making Idaho better and more competitive place. And our top issues were always transportation. Education was number one, and transportation, and then also making Idaho a better place to do business, including the tax relief. And that bill would have made us competitive with border states. That bill would have made everybody in the state, when they bought their groceries, have more money in their pocket. And at the same time, it was a small increase in the fuel tax, which was offset by the other tax cuts. And so I think it was a good bill. But again, we had more time to look at that than the Senate did. And they come in at a disadvantage having not been through what we've been through the last 2 months. And so, you know, I understand partly where they're coming from, but I really would have liked to have a vote.
So why not split the issues? Why not send them multiple bills and let them consider each on their own at face value?
Well, that's what we did. If you think about it, we sent them a registration bill, we sent them a general fund bill.
And you sent them an awfully big bill that included grocery tax cut and flat income tax.
And we did. Mm-hmm. And they could have broke it apart, like they're doing with the registration bill today. We sent them a registration bill. What did they do? The first thing they did is send them any order. They could have done the same if there was concern about a bill that had sales tax off of groceries in it with a fuel tax. I mean, they could have done the same thing. So I think that they've got other bills that they can work with because, you know, while the Constitution requires all revenue generating bills to start in the House, that's not always a good thing. It puts us at a disadvantage to the Senate, which is okay, that's how it's written. But, and they'll go through the learning process that we did. And I was hoping, though, like I said, that they would have taken it up, and they had the option, and they still do, by the way, have the option to break those components out and send them back. So they're going through the process we did. Give them some time. You know, they have the same problem looking forward that we did, is how do you weave the groove to get enough votes to get something done, and how do you get there without making the other side not accept what you do? So they're going through what we did, and we'll see what they come back with.
Now, with that in mind, is House leadership willing to address just transportation this session without tax changes?
You say House leadership. I don't think House leadership is, and I don't think the Republican caucus on the House side is either. I think they've got to be tied together. So we went through the same issue when we dealt with transportation in 2008, 9, whatever it was. It was the same issue then. How do you get just a tax increase through? And at that time, you know, we could have got a bill like House Bill 211 through because we did raise a few fuel taxes, but at the same time, we cut quite substantially the tax burden of the citizens of the state of Idaho. And I think that bill would have passed in that legislative session. So we were trying to find a way forward that addressed the concerns that we have today and also then. And that's why we did what we did with 311, excuse me.
You sound pretty optimistic that there might be a compromise out there, but what if there isn't? What if the Senate isn't on the same page?
And let's go home.
So you're willing to leave transportation on the table for the year?
We can address it next year. The most important part was education, and we've done education. And we've done a good job, I think, in education. We've given them a lot of money. We've given them new options. We've moved the ball down the field in regards to education. If we can't come to resolution on transportation, there's always next year, in my opinion.
You say there's always next year. Is that the same thing you would have said at the beginning of January coming into the session?
Yeah, I probably would have. But again, remember, we were trying to find solutions, and that's why we did with 311 what we did, and that's why we sent the bills that we did to the Senate. It's all about solutions, and that's how this product works, and it's not always comfortable, but that's how it works.
And there are a lot of proposed solutions out there, including a bill or an RS, I guess, being floated around by Representative Neil Anderson. There are some other representatives we've talked to. Are those proposals going to get a shot this year, or I guess I'm asking who's at the table?
Well, and that's the issue that the House has dealt with, because you've had all these proposals that are laying around, going everywhere, and we finally got to the point where we have to let the Senate have an opportunity to see what we're talking about and find that sweet spot we could get through the caucus. Remember, if you look at the votes on those 3 bills, you can get an idea of where the caucus is. Now, when those bills come back, will they have the opportunity for some of the other stuff that Representative Nielsen wants? You know, he's got some stuff that a lot of people don't like in his bill, a lot. And quite frankly, the bill wouldn't get through the caucus, I don't think personally, because it's too high. So I mean, so you're trying to find that sweet spot to get something to the Senate, knowing that they need the opportunity to go through what we have and look at the different proposals, which they can do by sending it to the amending order and come up with their solution. And that's what we're waiting for and looking for. And they need the time to do what we did and do their homework and their research. And all those proposals you hear out there have the same opportunity there as they did on the House. They have the framework. You know, what they do with it when it comes back, I don't know.
At what point do you say, that's it, we're not going to come up with a compromise, it's time to go home? What is what you're looking for?
Last Friday.
So we can go home now.
We could go home. You know, it's hard to say. Every session's different. People are tired. They want to go home now. We're waiting. We took a long weekend because we're waiting. You know, right now we're on the waiting mode. And the Senate's been in the same boat. They haven't had the opportunity till we sent those bills to them. So they're going through the learning process, and they need some time. So I don't know how long that is. Quite frankly, we could be done in a couple hours in the afternoon. There's just a few budget bills to do if you take transportation off the table. But I think that on the House side, there is a lot of us that they want to see some resolution, at least moving the ball down the field in regards to transportation. But again, it's got to be tied to that tax stuff, and it's some general fund money, and that's where the conflict may come with the Senate, I think. But I don't know. Let the Senate have the chance to work with it.
The governor's made it really clear that he wants transportation addressed this year. Has he indicated that if you go home without addressing it, that he's going to call a special session?
I think the governor's always been adverse to calling special sessions, and so I would assume that he's adverse to it. He hasn't said anything to me about that, though.
All right.
Well, I do know he does not like special sessions, though.
We've heard a lot of debate on transportation. We've heard a lot of proposals. We haven't really seen many proposals except for 311 on tax relief. And so what are some of the other proposals being floated, or are there any others? Well,
there were a couple. The Senate killed one of them this week, dealing with giving the counties the option to lower the threshold when they offer a property tax relief. There's some of those things that have been around. But on the tax side, I mean, when you go home, one of the biggest issues you hear about have and continue to be sales tax on groceries. And that's been pretty well supported by several of our Senate friends and on the House side. And then the other one's the income tax rates. If you watch the debate on House Bill 311, you saw that the Democrats gave out a chart with all the tax rates across the nation. And when you look at, blessed the Mississippi, California is higher than we are, Hawaii is higher than we are, and Oregon, and then Idaho. And quite frankly, Oregon, to be in the upper rate, you have to make $250,000, I'm told, and in Idaho it's $10,000 and some change. We're not competitive. And that's an important part when we look at the business structure in Idaho. And so when we were talking about this issue for years, we've always known that our income tax rates are too high. It's one of the biggest things that the chambers have always supported, lowering the income tax rates. It's one of the things you hear businesses complaining about. So what you saw on 311 were basically what we've been looking at for a long time, especially in regards to the income tax rates. Now, in that bill, we did not do the big corporations. We only did the LLCs, the sub-S's, the sole proprietorships. But that's 80% of the businesses in Idaho. Those are the small businesses that create the majority of the jobs. So we tried to address that when we did that. And so while you didn't see a lot of stuff floating around about, that was the main thing that we heard talked about in the back halls was the income tax rates and the grocery tax on food. So we put them together.
Now you say that lowering that to 6-7, that the highest brackets, would make Idaho more competitive. But how do you sell that to the average person watching who's saying, wait a minute, you're lowering taxes for the people who are making the most money? How is that palatable?
Well, see, and that's the problem that I had with all the press, because the press got it backwards. Let's look at what the bill did. The lower income guys were all kept whole. The 4 lower bands were kept the way they are. So if you're on the lower end, you weren't hurt or even touched. If you were on the higher end, did you get an advantage? Yeah, you did. But those are the same ones that create the jobs. There was a small band, though, that did get an increase. And I think the biggest increase on the individual side was like $180. But remember, they would have got more than that back on not paying sales tax for groceries. But that got lost in the press because it was all, the same media mantras of, only cutting taxes for the rich. You hear it every time we mess with income tax in Idaho. But remember this, in Idaho, the rich are those that make a little over $10,000 on adjusted gross income. That's insane. Even in Oregon, they say the rich are at $250,000 or above. So the problem we have in Idaho is there's a perception, and the perception was fed or fueled by some of those in the press. But in reality, it would have impacted to the positive almost everybody in the state of Idaho. And remember, even those low-income guys are working for somebody that's paying a tax. And if their tax burden's lower, they've got an opportunity for a raise or hiring more people or spurring the economy. One of the things that you didn't hear in the debate also was when you stick all that money back into the economy, into those individuals' hands, whether it's through the grocery tax credit or lowering their income taxes, do you think they're going to hide it under a rock? No, they're going to spend it. And when they spend it, it rolls over in the economy and the economy grows. Every time we cut taxes, whether it's income taxes or sales taxes, it comes back to the state many times over because people spend the money and it grows the economy. But the problem with you have a bill brought late in the session, the media was bad on it, the press was bad on it, and people didn't understand it. And that was one of the reasons I really wanted the Senate to have a hearing on it, so that they could hear the debate. If you were in the hearing, they wouldn't even ask me a question. Well, they had already decided what they wanted to do, and I really thought it would have been fair to have a longer hearing, let the public testify, and let people understand what's in the bill, because there's misconceptions about the bill today, and you bring them up, you're raising the taxes on the poor. It didn't do that. But that's okay. It's gone nowhere now. We'll see what the next stage is when the Senate deals with transportation and what they do with it.
We are pretty terrible in the media. It's
Some
true.
of you really are, but not
the
you.
worst. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
One last question. We've heard, one of the other criticisms I've heard about Idaho's tax structure is we have so many sales tax exemptions.
That's a good point.
And instead of having a wide base with a low tax rate for everybody, we have a big tax burden on the groups that are paying the tax burden or paying the taxes, and a lot of exemptions for a lot of people. Does the legislature have the appetite to go after those exemptions, considering campaign donations?
Good question. We've tried to do that twice. I've been on 2 interim committees. We've talked about that. In fact, you're looking at the one guy that got an exemption being repealed through both bodies to the governor, and the governor was auditor, and guess what he did with it? He vetoed that thing. I think that you bring up a good point, though, and I think there's a lot of us, and in fact, if you want, I can show you on my desk. I have the list of all those different exemptions, trying to figure out how we can maneuver that to broaden the base and lower the rates. And I think ultimately you'll see the legislature get there. But to get there, you've got to get the rate low enough on the income tax side to help take care of that. And so it's a twofold battle on both ends. And to get to exemptions takes a lot of fight. I mean, it's really hard to go to somebody and say, do you want to pay sales tax on your doctor bill? I don't think they do. Do you want to pay sales tax on you name your subject? They don't want to do it. your insurance, your services. It makes it hard to get the votes to go through. I mean, I remember we debated the caskets and the sales tax exemption for caskets. That's a hard one. Now, are there some easy ones? Yeah, maybe ski lifts. I mean, so there's places you can go, and that's a broader debate that the legislature's had a few times. But ultimately, Idaho has a problem. Your taxes are too high, which makes you uncompetitive. Remember, Oregon may have a little bit higher income tax rate if you make over $250,000. In Idaho, it's $10,000 plus, but they don't have any sales tax. Montana has a lower income tax. They don't have any sales tax. Washington has a higher sales tax. They don't have any income tax. Oh, and by the way, food isn't taxed in Washington. So there's all these different angles you have to look at when you talk tax policy, and that's one of the reasons I like to give the media a hard time, because my bill has been misconstrued throughout the state, and so it makes guys like me a little defensive, so I apologize for that. But ultimately, when you look at what we talked about at the start of the session, when we look at making Idaho education system better, making Idaho's roads better, and making Idaho more competitive in bringing jobs here, that's what we tried to accomplish with education, which we did, and that's what we tried to accomplish with the tax relief and the funding increase for fuel tax in 311. We were trying to accomplish all those goals.
One last question. When is your guess for when we're going to be out here? What's your date?
Hey, my guess is over. It was a week ago.
You already lost.
I missed the ball. I lost. I'm out on that bet. Sorry.
All right. Hey, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.